Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly settle down. The chief guest for the evening has already arrived. I'll take just a minute or two because a lot of requests has come to me. People are got stuck on the traffic. They requested that we can't change the timing, but I can take this opportunity to say a few words about what's happening in MMA so that you don't miss them. I'll say only quickly. On the 19th of Feb, Monday, we have an event on STEP to mental well-being. This we are doing jointly with Vedanta, and we got Irina, she's going to be talking to us. On 20th, again, a very, very important topic, Chennai rains, helpless, hopeless, and helpless. And we got the outstanding people who are specialists in the field to talk to us. What is the solution to avoid flooding in Chennai and how we can go forward? To come and listen to that. And on 23rd Feb, again, we have as usual, read and grow, and we strongly believe to be a great leader, you to be a great reader, and we got three outstanding. The book, what you're going to be discussing, many of you would have read it actually many a time. It's a fascinating book, Who Moved My Cheese? And you learn a lot of management lessons from that. Again, we have three outstanding panelists for that. And on 28th of Feb, again, this is a very, very important, one of the finest events for MMA happening over the last so many years. MMA Amalgamation Business Leadership Award. And N. Chandrasekharan, Chairman Tada's sons, is being conferred the MMA Amalgamation Business Award at glittering ceremony is happening at Taj. It's only by invitation, and already was sent the invite to all the members. You have to register. Prior registration is mandatory for this. Please request you to please do the registration. You already have more than 350 plus registrations. Do come. It's a fascinating evening. Besides that, we have number of events already lined up in the month of Feb, March, April. So do come. One major event of March is our Women Convention. It's again most sought after event, and it's a celebration of women. What we do, it's happening on 16th of March on Level Up is the theme of the Women Convention. Do come. Coming to today's event, I think we're all blessed, indeed honored to have this event this evening, and I'm quite sure being a Saturday also is going to be a full house. There are so many people are looking forward to this event. Indian corporates in the changing global order. And to speak on this and share his thoughts, which is going to be unique this evening and fascinating and very inspiring. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome the speaker, chief guest of the evening, Mr. Gurumurthy, corporate advisor, commentator, and economic and finance politics. And may I now request the president, MMA, Mr. Mahalingam, Lakshmi Narayanan, Honorary Treasurer and MMA, and Mr. Gurumurthy, please take your place on the dais. All the viewers watching the program, there's a message for you is that as usual, if you have any questions, there's a number flashed on your screen. You can share your questions with the number. We'll collect all the questions and place it before the distinguished speaker this evening. And just kindly agree to respond to all the questions what you're going to ask. And I only request you, please, the questions to be relevant to the theme what we are discussing today. Because the Gurumurthy is fascinating and he's well versed with many subjects. But you don't send it across, we'll place team, we'll take the call whether to respond to the questions or not. Before we move on further, let me have the privilege of requesting Mr. Lakshmi Narayan Dureswamy, he is the Managing Director of Sundaram Home Finance, and also our Honorary Treasurer, Chairman of Board of Governors of MMA, and he has got over 30 years of experience in finance, specializing in risk management operations, worked in GE Capital, number of other commerce graduate from under cost accountant and MBA. Now I request Lakshmi Narayan to please deliver the formal welcome. Over to you, Mr. Lakshmi.
Good evening, all of you. It's my privilege to deliver the formal welcome address at this very special event of MMA, Indian Corporates in the Changing Global Order by Mr. S. Gurumurthy. It's indeed an honor to welcome Mr. S. Gurumurthy, corporate advisor and commentator on economics, finance and politics, a rare mix these days. Sir, we are indeed privileged to have your presence this evening with us and eagerly looking forward to hearing your views on the subject. I take this opportunity to welcome all the delegates who have joined us this evening, guests and members of MMA from all over Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry, and guests of partner organizations, and the large number of participants from all over the country who have logged in online. As most of you are aware, MMA, which was established in 1956, has evolved today as the largest management association in the country with over 8,000 members and spread across 10 chapters in Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. MMA has been awarded the Best Management Association in the country 14 times a row by the All India Management Association. In the current landscape, external influence on corporate management is quite significant, especially considering the tumultuous geopolitical climate and the governance challenges that we face. It would be enlightening to hear Mr. Gurumurthy's views on Indian corporations and how they face these challenges from an Indian ethos perspective. I also take this opportunity to welcome past presidents of MMA, my colleagues from the management committee, members of MMA, distinguished invitees from corporates and other organizations, management students, and members who joined MMA from online all over the world. And through YouTube, Facebook, MMA live webinar, and also those who are listening it through the MMA radio, Voice of MMA. Wish you all a happy evening with the knowledge and inspiration for all of you, and have a good evening. And we look forward to this engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan. Mr. Mahalingam is a chemical engineer from NIT Trichy. I am a postgraduate holder, recognized as a distinguished alumni of with over 35 years of experience, and he is also leading KAS Mahalingam from India, leading automobile aftermarket brand in South India. And Mahalingam is the president of MMA. Now I request Mr. Mahalingam to please deliver the formal introductory remarks, and he also introduce the speaker. Over to you, Mahalingam.
Thank you, Vijay. Good evening, everybody. I must confess that introducing such an eminent person like Sri Gurumurthy, I'm experiencing contrasting emotions. On one side, I'm extremely proud and excited and honored to have the opportunity to do this. On the other side, I'm very nervous and very worried that I might miss out some aspects of this multifaceted personality that Sri Gurumurthy is. Let me try though. Chartered accountant, pioneering investigative journalist, editor, corporate and legal advisor, thought leader in economic and strategic affairs, Vice Chairman of the Vivekananda Foundation, visiting Professor of Business and Management, IIT Bombay, and much, much more. I'm sure I've left out a bit. Apologies if I have. Beyond all that, I think the basis of all this, and to top it all, is Sri Gurumurthy, without doubt, is one of the sharpest minds in the country on multiple matters. We are indeed very honored and fortunate to have you, sir. When the office bearers for this year were elected, and I had a message, I was very thrilled to get a message from Gurumurthy congratulating me on becoming president. So I called back to thank him, and his immediate question was, all that's fine, so what are you planning for MMA? So to which I said the usual thing, we'll have 3 conventions, we'll have eminent speakers, nice sessions, etc. All that is fine. He said, now next what? Then he said, what are you going to do to create a sustaining impact on management thinking in this country and this city? He said, MMA is in a unique position to do that, and I think there's a big opportunity to do that. I said, okay, then I decided that this discussion would not go further without meeting him in person. So I sought an appointment and went there. And believe me, over the next 2 to 3 months, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, Shankar, our Senior Vice President, me and Lakshmi Narayan visited him in his office twice. I'm telling you, each one of those was a masterclass. He used to reel out facts, details. He used to talk about world history, Indian culture, Indian approach to people and management, Western practices, Western capital raising models, Western capital structures. We were bedazzled. And every time we came back learning a lot more. And I should be doing what I did the day, listening rather than speaking. But I have to do this, I'm doing this. So at the end of it, we kind of arrived at a topic. His suggestion was what we have today, Indian corporates in the changing world order. He was of the view that we have to introduce management thinking and practices in this city and country which are more in tune with local culture, local relationship focus, and local realities. You won't believe it, he sent us a synopsis which is so exhaustive. It was like for me reading a thesis paper in college back, I can tell you. That's the kind of effort that has gone into it. What he did was he kind of traced the history of the world where it started with West one-size-fits-all approach, where all of us, especially those with a colonial past, were following Western practices almost blindly. And he said that happened between, he quotes a 1951 paper in which the world believed, the West believed that local practices, local cultures had to be virtually destroyed for proficiency and efficiency to happen. That started changing in his view between 2005 and 15 after the dot-com bust and the Asian crisis, that the one-size-fits-all approach started getting questioned. Started changing rapidly towards the later half of the decade, and by 2019, the post-pandemic, what happened was a West-led growth model was getting questioned and virtually over with. So he traces this beautifully and then goes on to say, what's in it for India and Indian businesses? That's going to be, in my thought, the bulk of what he's going to talk about. I'm sure he has a lot more to say on a lot more things, but I think he's going to talk about what's in it for India and for Indian businesses. As I said, I should not be talking, I should be listening. I think all of us are waiting to listen to him. My observation, my deep admiration is the fact that Mr. Gurumurthy has numbers on the top of his mind, chooses his words so beautifully. So in many ways, he makes every word count. I think we should weigh every word he says with a lot of importance and take away today. He said this should not be a one-off speech. He wants people and corporates we have invited here today to absorb what is there, internalize, and maybe validate their company processes in that light. And as he said, this should be a movement and not a one-off event. So that is the spirit of this event which we have imbibed from Mr. Gurumurthy. Take this process of Indian management thinking, local management thinking, and make sure it is customized. Actually, he also mentioned during our conversations, he has advised leading corporates, really large corporates on this idea, and they've seen excellent results following this model, and he said some of them are already following that model. So there's so much to learn from Sri Gurumurthy. We are really honored, excited to have you, sir. Thank you so much. Looking forward to your speech.
Mr. Mali, Mr. Lakshminaran, and so many friends of mine who are here, and dear brothers and sisters. Namaskarams to all. You know, when they came and discussed with me, I had quite a lot of things to tell them, which is far too heavy for the contemporary discourse. Today, you want things which will be useful for the day, tomorrow, day after. The world has got so short-termist in character. Previously, we used to think of a decade's growth. After 5 years, what will happen? Next year's situation. Everything got reduced to quarterly results. And now nations' moods are decided by overnight interest rates. You can understand the short-termist approach which is now sweeping the world. And this one of my studies, why China is rising and US is declining. In 2011, strategic thinkers in US began studying declinism of US. Declinism of US is because the US was a new country and succeeded. Had it been a country with baggages like us, like other countries, it would have faced the same problem which we are facing. It did not face any of those problems, so it created new problems for itself which it did not solve, and its problems it universalized for others also. So we are a country with a blackboard on which there is so many scribblings for the last 5,000 years. Some are good, some are bad, some are relevant, some are actually bad for today and tomorrow. You know, this kind of objective assessment about ourselves has been lacking so much in our society. And the most tragic thing is that we know very little about ourselves. This has been my finding in the last 40 years of my understanding of this country and the world from different perspectives. From business, of course, finance, and everything associated with that, corporate economics to national and global economics, journalism, politics, philosophy, social practices. From all perspectives, I had an opportunity to study. It is not by my own effort. It is from one accident to other which gave me access to knowledge about different dimensions of national and global life. You know, I will start with what was my experience in London in 1986. When I was a fairly well-known corporate advisor in India, and I had been invited by one of the most important NRIs at that time, Suraj Pal. He had called me for some discussions. So when I landed, of course, I had gone today to return with the business class ticket for tomorrow. I had only 1 day's discussion. So I was crossing the immigration. They asked, why have you come here for? I said, I've come because I am a consultant, corporate consultant. And I gave my credentials and also the invitation letter from Suraj Pal. And the fellows are standing there to receive me. Every Indian says this. Because that was my first understanding about how Indians are viewed by the white man. So, sir, I may be, but I am really going back. What is the guarantee you will go back? I said, I have my return ticket in British Airways, in business class. That's what everybody says. You can always come with the ticket. What are you saying? You mean to say I am going to stay here? That is the last desire I have, to leave my country and be here. Since you are so offensive to me, I am not going to enter your country. Please prepone my ticket and send me back. I was shocked. Because he has not seen any Indian responding like that. Then he didn't know what to do. He said, sir, I am sorry. I said, I want a written apology. I will not settle unless you give a written apology, because you have not defamed me, you have defamed my country. Of course, afterwards some discussion, some senior came, and I settled for an oral apology by the topmost person present there. This opened a new understanding about how others view us. This is a very important lesson. This is what opened me to think about the world, not from a very narrow perspective of business, profit, investment. Something far more is needed. So with this, I began studying very deeply about India, about the world, about the different economic, trade, commercial practices, and my ideas became more macro than micro. In fact, that was very helpful to me, even in my micro professional practice, because there is no divorce between the micro and the macro. So far as the intellectual understanding of what we are advising our client is concerned, it actually improved my standing with my client. Because I was not talking only about one, I was talking about 10, and each had its importance about what we were discussing. So, my mind was open to challenges, issues, problems, which this country is facing, which this country is not handling, the media is not handling, the political leadership is not handling, intellectualism, academics all have failed. This was the first understanding I had. In fact, this I have been writing, speaking. In fact, when I spoke in IIT in 2010, that's one of the speeches which, if you have time, you must listen. That was Shailendra Mehta Institute of Management. They had called me to deliver a lecture, and I delivered that lecture. Afterwards, all the students and the faculties came and said, "Sir, we know nothing about what you are talking." IIT, which is supposed to be the window of India to the world, and the world's perspective about India is being developed by such high-end educational institutions. They confessed they knew nothing about what I was saying about India, not in the context of philosophy, culture, in the context of economics, in the context of entrepreneurial development, in the context of how India is developing. They didn't even see the nexus between Indian development and India. They related it to FIIs putting money into India. That's how the entire American thinking failed in China, because they thought it was their money which was developing China. No, their money was developing China to develop in the Chinese way. But our intellectualism, our experts, our political thinkers, our bureaucrats, our economists, never thought we are developing because we have something in us. This, my perspective I acquired when I started traveling across the country. My first lesson was in Ludhiana, Batala, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Morbi, right down to Thoothukudi. I traveled 42 industrial clusters, and I found something very different happening in those places which you will not find in economic time or business line or in the researches or the studies about India. This is what I spoke in the IIT. They said, "Sir, we know nothing about these things." And so they asked me to conduct a course for them, which I did for 4 years. And I asked the IIT students only one thing: don't attend campus interview. This actually sapping your energy and buying you for money. You will be surprised. No, it was a fulfillment of my life. After 5 years, when I went to Indore, 2 young men came and touched my feet and said, "You advised us not to go for campus interviews. Today we are running a business, which is an improvement of their family business, which is a small trading business. Sir, we are running a company which employs 1,200 people. 2 young men." That is the potentiality of India. And I found in the course of my entire understanding about Indian economy, Indian industry, Indian commercial practices, entrepreneurship, that most of the employees in India are educated and most of the entrepreneurs are uneducated. Tirupur is probably the knitwear export capital of the world. Today their export almost touches $7 to $8 billion. 67% of the exporters are educated less than 10th standard. Only 7% are graduates. Out of the 5 top diamond exporters, 3 are educated only up to 5th standard. Your education has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. So from this perspective, I have to talk to you. This is the micro ground level study, but I have to take you to another level, helicopter view, and then bring you down to understand what institutions like MMA can do and should do. And if they fail to do, they will be only doing holding operations. There are two India in the perspective of the world and in our own perspective. I don't know how many of you heard about Max Weber. He is supposed to be the conceptualizer of the modern world. The modern West owes its entire philosophic and practical background to Max Weber. Max Weber said only if you have this Protestant Christian values, you can develop a market economy. And he was right, because all the Catholic nations were lagging behind and all the Protestant nations were moving up, even within Christendom. So he was right, because he had studied that society for 30 years. But he didn't study this society, our society, China and India, but he wrote a book, The Religion of Hinduism, and another book, Religion of Buddhism, and he said, these two societies will never come up in modern economy, because they believe in karma and rebirth. You believe in karma and rebirth, you don't have the capacity to develop risk-bearing tendencies, you leave everything to fate. Such a superficial view of India. This is what Max Weber wrote, 1897 or 1900, he wrote this book, which was published in India somewhere in 1950s, and that became the Bible for the Indian sociologists, Indian development thinkers, Indian government, Indian policy makers. Before that, in 1853, Karl Marx wrote a couple of articles in New York Herald Review, which is now International Herald Tribune, in which he said, of course, India is some kind of a primitive socialist society, but this society has a very big problem, that it has not changed for the last 2000 years. Stagnant. What we call a stable, he called it a stagnant. And he said, this is a society which worships cows and monkeys. How can this semi-barbaric society develop? And he said the British are doing the right thing by destroying this society, its economy, its trade, its education. It's very painful. He quoted Goethe to say, it's a very painful destruction, but there is a pleasurable part of it also. That is how India would be prepared for revolution. Karl Marx and Max Weber were the intellectual masters of India, and in a sense for the world also. Then came, this is how these people cannot grow. One is you are disqualified for development. You are qualified for development only if you cease to be yourself. This is Karl Marx. So, India was growing at 3%, 2.5%, 4%. So, in 1978, Professor Raj Krishna, who was a socialist economic thinker and was an advisor to the government of India also, he was asked, sir, we are following the same socialist policies which the East European countries, which Russia, which other countries are following, but they are growing at 5%, 6%, 7%. We are growing only at 3%. Sir, what is the cause? He said, whatever policies you follow, we will have only Hindu rate of growth. That is how the word Hindu rate of growth came into our discourse. It has become part of our dictionary. It has become part of our psyche. It has become part of public discourse. It has become the brand of India. You know, Robert McNamara, this happened in 1978. Robert McNamara began begging the world, here is a society which is a burden on the world. I am begging for assistance for the poor people of India. Aid India Consortium was formed. This was the brand of India in 1980-81. This is the perspective which dominated us. This is how we understood India. It is not that it is how they understood India. This is how we began understanding India. This is one perspective of the West about India. And I am going to give you another perspective of the same West about India, that of scientists and historians. You will be amazed. at the contract. And how, sorry, because the last minute I couldn't. I'm talking about what scientists said about India. Not ordinary scientists. Nobel laureates. What did they say about India? Not now, in 1930s, in 1920s. After conversation about Indian philosophy, some of the ideas of quantum physics that seemed so crazy suddenly made much more sense. Werner Heisenberg, Nobel Science Prize winner. Some blood transfusion from the east to the west is a must to save the Western science. Vedanta teaches that consciousness is singular. All happenings are played out in one universal consciousness and there is no multiplicity of self. Erwin Schrödinger, Austrian physicist, the father of quantum physics, Nobel Prize winner for innovation in wave mechanics. In all the world, there is no kind of framework within which we can find consciousness in the plural. This is simply something which we construct because of the temporal plurality of individuals. But this is a false construction. There is only one solution to this conflict so far as any is available to all of us, and that lies in the ancient wisdom of Upanishad. Schrödinger. I go into Upanishads to ask questions. Niels Bohr, the Bohr model of atom inventor, nuclear physicist, Nobel Prize winner for physics in 1922. Vedanta and Sankhya hold the key to the laws of mind and thought process which are correlated in the quantum field. That is the operation and distribution of particles at an atomic and molecular levels. Brian David Josephson, Welsh physicist, the youngest Nobel laureate. I can keep on quoting. You must have heard about Robert Oppenheimer, who was the father of the atom bomb. He must have been wandering around Chennai some time back in search of truth. These are all the people who spoke about India. And then I will quote you what two greatest historians spoke about India. It is true, that is Will Durant. He stated it in 1935. It is true that even across the human barrier, India has sent to us such questionable gifts as grammar and logic, philosophy and fables, hypnotism and chess, and above all the numerals and our decimal system. But these are not the essentials of our spirit. But they are trifles compared to what we can learn from her in future. Perhaps in turn for the conquest, arrogance and spoliation. India will teach us the tolerance of the gentleness of mind, the quiet content of the acquisitive soul, the calmness of understanding spirit, and unifying and pacifying love of all living things. Love of all living things is important because I am going to demonstrate to you. You will be amazed. The Indian government was shocked when certain things were told to them. That's what I'm going to tell you at the end. Then Toynbee. It is already becoming clear that a chapter which had Western beginnings will have to have an Indian ending if it is not to end in destruction of the human race. At this supremely dangerous moment in human history, the only way of salvation is the ancient Hindu way, and we have an attitude and spirit that can make it possible for the human race to grow into a single family. This is another perspective which we do not even know. It is the sociologists and economists who presented India in such a manner that no Indian will feel proud and every Indian will feel ashamed. Scientists and historians who are not contextualized. A historian is not contextualized by today. He sees it from a perspective of 200 years back and 100 years forward. Their perspective is different. They see India as guiding the world. The scientists say that things which are not clear to science is clear in the ancient Vedas and Upanishads. This our students have not heard, our academics have not heard, our policy makers have not heard, the media doesn't know, certainly not MMA. Unless you understand it, how do you understand India? Now I will take you to where we are talking about world order. Where did this world order begin? Order means there is a system, there is a leader, there is a governance model, there are rules and regulations, behavioral, then punishment, there is an institution. All this was conceived after the Second World War. The United Nations was constituted. The undeclared and later declared leader of this whole order was US. It's important to know that the report of the expert committee, this is the source of all the problems of India and all the non-Western nations. What I am going to read out to you. This is clearly the encapsulation and formalization of what Karl Marx and Max Weber said. This is a report of the expert committee of United Nations measures for the development of underdeveloped nations. Of course, a huge document. And if you read more, you will be so pained. So I am reading out the least painful part, but the most instructive part of the report. There is a sense in which rapid economic progress is impossible without painful adjustments. Ancient philosophies have to be scrapped, precisely what Max Weber said. Precisely what Karl Marx said. Old social institutions have to disintegrate. I will explain the meaning of it. There should be no relationship of any kind. We should all become atomized individuals bound only by contract, law, courts, government. This is Western anthropological modernity. Bonds of caste, creed and race have to burst. And then comes the warning. And large number of persons who cannot keep up with progress have to have their expectations of a comfortable life frustrated. Very few communities are willing to pay the price for rapid economic progress. This was a global advisory for all developed nations. Our IAS officers, our IFS officers, our academic institutions, our academics, our media were evangelized into this. If you are what you are, you can never develop. You have to cease to be what you are to develop. This has been ingrained into the Indian psyche, Indian public discourse. And I will relate to you as you are getting released from this psychological bond we are developing. It is not that we are developing and so we are giving it up. Actually, India is moving away from this kind of intellectually oppressive thoughts. That is what I am going to tell you now. So we followed the sociologists and economists, and we ignored historians and scientists and thought that we were semi-barbaric race, we have to be turned into modern nation by Western understanding of ourselves. This is how we began to perceive ourselves. This was 1951. 1990, at least they told us this is how you develop. In 1990, when globalization came, we accepted, yes, you are right. Our own entire country, why? The entire world accepted the West is the best, because Francis Fukuyama wrote a book. That book was called The End of History and the Lost Man. And that is supposed to be the Bible of globalization. He said that finally the West has won against the rest. The liberal democracy and market capitalism have become the final victors, and it is the best for the rest to follow the West as the best. That was the simple formulation he made. The whole world accepted it. And the West itself began believing it. The problem is, when you begin believing you are the victor and all of us are losers, there's something seriously wrong with you in history. There is no perpetual victor in history, is what history teaches the whole world. The West believed it has become final victor. And I don't want to go more into it, how they began to feel that they are much more powerful, modern, intellectual, and military power. And they began extending the NATO, and see what happened today. You may be surprised to know Russia is on the verge of victory in Ukraine. Whole world was lured into believing Western way is the best way, and the West itself began declaring it's a what man he essential. Isn't this all foolish? Because civilizational consciousness is so deep in human mind and in DNA, there will be civilizational clashes in the world. You cannot ignore it, and that was Samuel Huntington. He was dismissed, pilloried. He was called as someone who will destroy the liberal world. But when the 2001 terror attack took place, everybody silently accepted that there is something of Huntington in the global strategic discourse. Because I am part of a huge strategic community at the head. Of course, I was introduced as the vice chairman of Vivekananda International Foundation. That was till 2018. Afterwards, I became the chairman. So I deal with the strategic community at various levels, global level, local level. So how the global strategic thinking shifts from time to time, I am very familiar with. So this clash between globalization and civilizational rise has been going on without the world noticing it, and certainly we did not notice it. And in 2008, when the financial collapse took place, then everyone in the West knew the Western financial model is not sustainable. But they cannot say it, because if they say it, it will collapse tomorrow. Keep the show going. I will give you evidence of it. In end June 1989, The Economist magazine came out with a cover story. The modern economics is melting away. What's wrong with economics? You must read the editorial. It said that economists became more powerful than politicians, and Alan Greenspan, if he died today, he must be still put on the US Federal Reserve chief's chair with dark glasses so that no one knows he is a dead figure sitting there, because he is so important for the world. He ruled the world for 20 years. No American president ruled for more than 8 years. US Federal Reserve was the most permanent institution which decided the fate of all economies. In fact, when Alan Greenspan said in 1993 that Japanese economy is showing irrational exuberance, the Japanese stock market fell by 3%. That was the towering influence they controlled the world. After 2008, it became to this one-size-fits-all model was openly questioned in 2008. I'm going to give you 3-4 dates. In 2005, the G20 met in Beijing, where for the first time, because of China's influence, because China was rising, and China could not be ignored in 2005, China said that every country will have to have its own development model. There cannot be a universal one-size-fits-all model. It became the official resolution of the finance ministers and central bank governors of G20 nations in 2005. I don't think our newspapers even published it. In 2008, the World Bank said in its newsletter that we were the ones who believed that the whole world can be corrected on the basis of one-size-fits-all model. We have learned the hard way that not workable. Each country will have to work out its own model. And then came in 2010, the United Nations, and then 2013 and 2014, the UNGA also discussed and they said this one-size-fits-all model should be thrown over lock, stock and barrel. Not a single word in Indian media, Indian public discourse, among Indian academics. Certainly not the government. It was only in 2015, on the 2nd of January 2015, when the Niti Aayog was created, the Prime Minister insisted on putting 4 sentences. He said, we will follow only what works in and for India. You can see this quote is a beautiful resolution. I don't know whether Niti Aayog read it. Second was that we need a Bharatiya model for development. I don't think it was even discussed in India, not even criticized. They ignored. Why I am saying this is that this one-size-fits-all model has been consigned in macroeconomics, in finance, certainly in politics. The West used to criticize us that you are not a liberal economy. You are a liberal democracy. You are a third-rate democracy. But they found that liberal democracy constitutes only 12% of the global population. So they are holding India's hands so that democracies can reach a respectable figure of 30%. The world needs India. They were certifying, rating our economies, that they were rating the economy and our security. So, with the rise of Asia and later the rise of India, for reasons the West is not fathoming even today, why is India rising, they don't know. They are certainly clear, it is not because of FIA flow. There is something more to it. So, in this situation, the declinism of America and of the West, coupled with the rise of Asia, this created a new debate, which I mentioned to Mali, that the world began understanding the difference between what is market economics and market society. This is one of the things all of you must begin discoursing, because it is very important for macroeconomics as well as for corporate economics. Market economics is that market goods are bought and sold, services, price is determined, interest rates are determined somewhere. But in market society, that happens inside the house. Human beings become merely playthings. But beautiful explanations are given as to what is a market society. That you lend your forehead for 1 month to be painted by Coca-Cola, for which you will get $1,200. But if you permanently make it a mark, you will get $25,000. You will wear this and go around. People are willing to. This is market society. Human beings losing everything just in pursuit of money and pleasure. They said Asia is rising because it is not a market society. West is declining because it has become a market society. Family is destroyed, community is destroyed, relationship is destroyed, which I will go into later. So, this was understood. And it is in this context, between 2020 and now, how the whole world order is standing on its head. When the, supply chains, I used to discuss with my friends who were in government, even in UPA time, some of the good friends. In fact, I had very fruitful interaction with even Pranab Mukherjee at that time. It was very difficult for him even to meet me. We met secretly. So, I said the way we are going about this global supply chain, all this is not going to work unless you have a global government, global army, global leader. It's not possible, it's not going to work. Let the whole world, and certainly not India, get adjusted to global supply chain. I was the lone dissenter. In fact, in 1995, when I addressed the Administrative Staff College of India in Hyderabad, when I was explaining how globalization is not sustainable, one person stood up and said, people like you must be shot dead because you are taking the country 500 years back. That is the extent of pressure of public opinion that has been built by such intense evangelization. In 200 years, mercantile capitalism was finished. In 100 years, communism is finished. In 100 years, capitalism is finished. In 50 years, communism is finished. In 20 years, 25 years, globalization is over. The shelf life of all the ideas which governed the world have crashed. Because they were all based on one size and the Western leadership dominating the world. And that came to be completely questioned in 2020. When the pandemic came, no one knew how to handle it. No one ever thought India would handle it. There were estimates. Some 30 crore people will be infected and 3 crore people will die in 1 year. All over the world, in our own country. But we decided no. We will make our vaccine. Everybody thought Narendra Modi was a madman. But we have the capacity. He understood that the country has the capacity. With the result, when we came out with our vaccine, we even supplied vaccine to the world. The world looked at India. It had nothing to do with the FII investment, understand? It has nothing to do with the FDI. It had nothing to do with your English education. It had nothing to do with the media. It had to do with the potentiality of Indians. Day and night people worked. And the Prime Minister was on phone with them. Do it, do it, do it. This is faith plus promotion. It's changing the perception of the world about India. And not so much about India in the mind of the Indians itself. No. This, don't go for the vaccine. This is the kind of political propaganda which was going on. Even BJP vaccine would have been more acceptable. They called it Modi vaccine. Such negativity had come into our public discourse. The world understood that something is happening in India. Something very different is happening in India. At that time, the man who fashioned the world order, Henry Kissinger, he wrote a 625-word article in his blog, in which he said the world order will change forever. There is no other explanation. This was like an Upanishad statement. The world was shaken. The man who conceptualized, constructed, built, and evangelized even China into that world order said the world order will change forever. Then everybody began discussing. World order will change, world order will change. Because the core of the American success was to turn China into a dirty factory of the world. Put so much money in China that Chinese will become prosperous. And a prosperous society will never accept communism. You see, it is like touching the nose from behind. And this is a great intellectual exercise that was started in 1993, if I remember right, in Bill Clinton's regime. When Bill Clinton began engaging China, after the Tiananmen Square attack, without any kind of remorse from China, it raised a Frankenstein monster and kept it at our border. We have 5,000 kilometers border with us. If America had 5,000 kilometers border with China, would have taken that risk. If if America had 500 kilometers border with Afghanistan, with Pakistan, would they take that risk? 6,000 miles away. You are so safe. And you lay the rules for the rest to follow. Please understand how much intellectual inadequacy we must have had, not understanding the geographical, political, geopolitical, economic, technological, educational difference between America and the rest of the world and us. In 2022, when Russia attacked Ukraine, the world did not know what's happening. And Russia thought it is a 1-month game. We will wipe out. They made initial mistakes, but they could not but have done it. If they had not attacked Ukraine, in 10 years there will be no Russia. No country can take that. Even American strategic thinkers accepted. Even Kissinger said this is not a risk that Russia could have accepted. You are expanding NATO into the stomach of Russia. At that time, the Prime Minister did not have much time to decide. Maybe he had a couple of hours to decide. To stand neutral between Russia and America, which means favoring Russia. America even thought of sanctions. America will immediately think of sanctions only. In 1998 they did. And there is a beautiful scholarly work done by the Australian think tank. Every sanction has been a failure in the world, except that it is a propaganda. In fact, when the sanctions took place, Abdul Kalam told me, "So, Gurumurthy, please see this sanction continue for another 4-5 years. DRDO will develop even further." Please, the sanctions it is the intellectuals who feel sanctions are bad. Scientists do not. Politicians fear. Technocrats do not. So America even thought of sanctions. But if the Prime Minister had not taken, or India had not taken the decision, the oil prices would have hit 150, 160, 200. When India took the decision, the entire oil producing countries felt that we should not get into the game of high oil prices, because unreasonable oil prices will destroy the oil producing countries themselves in future, because they want to move out of oil production in the next 5 years, in the next 50 years, because of environmental consideration. They don't consider oil as a permanent thing, and the unreasonable rise in oil prices is going to make them think twice. And so what happened? Oil prices went up to 120, it began crashing, and it is now normal, and we are buying oil from Russia, refining it and exporting it to Europe. So it is washed, the sins of Russian oil are washed in the Ganges of the Indian refinery. America doesn't know what to do. This is the change in the world order. The world order is that there is no hegemonic power today. The Center for Foresight of the European Union, it's a very important study. You can go to the European Union website and see how the world order is changing. It is called Center for Foresight. It says that in the next 5 years, all middle powers will rise. By 2030, there will be no hegemonic power. This is the shift in the world order. And now what is happening in India? India too has changed. When India exploded the Pokhran atom bomb, everybody thought, what's happening in India? Bill Clinton said, a country of Gandhi and Buddha have done this. We were always the land of Buddha and Gandhi. How did it reach us? The moment we exploded the Pokhran atom bomb, the world began to deal with us, negotiate with us, engage with us. The world respects power. The Indians did not understand because we had always a civilizational conflict between power and our value. This is happening from Vedic days. And it is only Chanakya who shifted it. It's a huge topic. I don't want to impose you on this. And you will be surprised to know that it is in Pakistan government's website containing the history and culture of Pakistan. I read the interaction between Alexander and Kautilya. How Kautilya's mind changed. He was teaching in Takshashila University. And when he found that there will be unreasonable adharmic wars, people with big armies will conquer us, we need a stable army, we need a stable government, we need resources, he began conceiving a state. And he shifted the mind of India from merely defensive posturing to offensive posturing. And we built 800 years, we built big empires. And then came one thinker by name Banabhatta. Kautilya, they say, is from Kerala. This Banabhatta is from Bihar, the same place from where Buddha originated. And he said this fellow is an adharmi. He is promoting what is known as acquisitive war. That's not our war system. Our war is that we should not conquer others, we should not destroy others, we should, even if we conquer and win, we'll have to hand over the kingdom back to the defeated person. This is our dharma. And he is now destroying all this and creating violence in the society. You know what happened? The entire Arthashastra books disappeared all over India and only one copy escaped in Tanjore. And that was handed over to Mysore Maharaja Library in 1907. And that was translated into English in 1913. And that is what we have today. And because we delegitimized Kautilya, in 500 years we lost our entire freedom. This is how the Indian mind always was in conflict between how to handle power. If you create power, it will not, even now in many families they won't keep weapons. Don't keep weapons because in a move you may use them. But in America, 33 crore Americans have 39 crore guns. You can understand. What can happen to that society on that basis? So, India changed in 1998, 2014, and now everyone says India has changed. The world has changed. India has changed. But what is its impact on Indian businessmen, Indian entrepreneurs, academics, professionals, and managers? Unless you view it in this perspective. That is why I went to Kew in a helicopter travel. And I have come to what we as people operating in specific areas should do. First, we must know about India. Most people do not know about India. And this is like, Newton's falling apple facts not being noticed. In fact, when I was talking to the Prime Minister, that is how it originated. I also said in the lecture which I delivered on the basis to the Niti Aayog, I will capture it in 2-3 minutes. And then I will tell you, that will open your mind about what is India in the context, in the current context, and how it is going to be the solution for the world in future. Though the India landscape is just 2.4% of the global land area. This is also very good. We have 18% of world's human population, 30% of world's bovine population, 40% of world's cattle population, 8% of birds and animals, and we have 21% forest coverage. You tell this, the world will be shaken. Our bovine population is 535 million. And that of America, 89 million. That of China, 19 million. Only Brazil comes somewhere half of us. 235 million. You know why? It is because we use our agricultural land for crop production. We have world's agricultural land, this entire space. Only 10.3% is farmland. Out of which 2.4% is used, less than 1/4 is used for crop production. The balance is used for meat production. Crops give you 83% of the calorie value, and meat gives only 17% of the calorie value. And crop gives 37% of the, all this I explained to the Prime Minister. Crop gives 63% of the protein value, and meat gives 37%. Meat to crop, CO2 gas emission, if crop emits 1% CO2, meat extraction is 10 to 100%. In fact, in the Paris Earth Summit, they wanted 1 day meat-free holiday to be declared. That would have been a solution for the world's environmental problems, global warming problem. Now nobody talks about environment or ecology. Nobody even talks about global warming. They are all talking about 1.5 degrees. It is all reduced, like economics has been reduced to econometrics. Now it has been reduced to a degree. Nobody talks about environment because the West cannot talk about environment at all. The amount of CO2 gas emission they have pumped in the last 300 years is 90%. This is the permanent damage. CO2 gas emission is a permanent damage to the atmosphere. 90% of the CO2 gas emission they have been put into the atmosphere is by the Western model of development. Having done that, they say we are going back. So this is the environmental debate in which it's all supply side discourse. I am going to talk about the demand side, the lifestyle. So now, because of this, we are able to feed 140 million people with 1% of global land area, because we are able to extract 83% of the calories, 37% of the protein from that. And our meat consumption is 3.1 kg per head per annum. America's is 124. That of Europe is something like 110 or 120. South Africa 180. Japan, which was having as close to us in 1950 because of the Western culture, their meat consumption has shot up to 49 kg, almost equal in China. A month back, a well-known ecologist gave an interview in Times of India. I don't know whether you read it. First page flap, half flap. World is being warmed up by everybody. The only country which is mitigating it is India through vegetarians. It's not that we don't eat non-vegetarians. We eat non-vegetarian, but it's a subject for us. Our food habits have been conceived like this. Is it by accident? It is by a philosophy. It is by a working model. It is not that non-vegetarians are bad. There is a stage at which people even give up non-vegetarian. For example, people do not eat non-vegetarian on Ekadashi or Amavasya or Friday or Saturday. These are all restraint on us that we should not kill for pleasure. With the result, India has been able to maintain its population by an acculturated food habit. This was the position even in 1960 when we did not have, you go into statistics, an amazing revelation, that in 1960s when we did not have food, cattle population kept rising. We never thought it only for eating. So, when we said one earth, one family, and when Arnold Toynbee said that it is for all the living beings, There is an environmentally compatible lifestyle. This is what the Prime Minister's G20 message. Of course, it's much more, to tell you simply, if all Americans shift to, if all Indians shift to McDonald's and burgers, you know what is the calculation? We will need 6 times the agricultural land we have. We will need 2.5 times the size of India. If the whole world shifts to the American way of eating, we will need 40% more agricultural land than the world has. If the world shifts to the Indian way of eating, it will need only 40% of the agricultural land it uses. If you want to get all this data, you can access ourworldindata.com. So we have a model for the world, for the future. Unless we understand it, what will you think about India? India is a country of future, not for itself, for the whole world. Environmental paradigm is now sweeping the world. And the only answer is through lifestyle. It cannot be through controlling how much power you produce and how much fossil fuel you use. Unless you create a restrained lifestyle for which there is a working model, it is not in libraries or in dead books. Living model. You know, this culture prevails. You know what is the meat consumption in Bangladesh? You will be surprised. It's 100%, almost 100% Muslim country. 94% or so. Same as India. Culture is the same. But we don't want to even talk about it. How damaged is our intellect? How much deficit is there in our public discourse? So first, know something about India. Now more specifically, we have to think as Indians. At least now let us begin thinking about Indians, because Indians are respected everywhere. Because you are not respected there, you are not respecting yourself, you are not respecting the country, you are not respecting your forefathers, you are not respecting your philosophy. Now the reverse is happening. So as I mentioned, we are a market economy and not a market society, and I have advised many corporates that in India, buying is not an individual decision, it's a family decision. There are many researches about it. The family collectively decides, it orders. It is not that an individual may buy some pen or something like that, but when it comes to a substantial buying, it's a market economy and not a market society. There is a difference between the two. For example, take Indian lifestyle. We have 4.9 persons per household in India. In America, it is 2.5. In America, it was 3 in 1960. It has come down to 2.5. The result of this reduction in 5 is construction of 35 million more houses at a cost of $8.5 trillion. I am not going into the environmental cost. In India, if the number of persons reduced from 4.9 to 2.5, we will need 135 million more houses. There will be no place in India accommodating others. Relation-based lifestyle, taking care of elders, taking care of informed people. This has nothing to do with economics, gentlemen. This has nothing to do with law. This has nothing to do with Indian laws. In India, there is no law requiring you to take care of your family, parents. But it is happening. Because it is happening, our economy is functioning. And in America, they handed over the responsibilities of maintaining the parents, the grandparents, people who are dependent on them. They have been given to the care of the state. Even the children are not educated. If a child is there with the father beyond the age of 14, are you still with your father? It's a humiliation to be with the parent. That is the extent to which relationships have been destroyed. With the result, America went on the paradigm of universal social security. The universal social security was initially giving money, and now there is more withdrawals because The baby boomers have lost. America is not replacing its population. With the result, more withdrawals are there. The deficit started in 2006. And now they say the present value of the future social security is $72 trillion, which is 3 times the American GDP. But in India, it is so culturally arranged that 90% of the parents are being taken care of, except 10% who have gone abroad, they have not taken care of their parents. There is a social overseeing. A man will not be respected if he doesn't take care of the parents. This is the impact of culture and society on economics, on macroeconomics. If all Indians, yearning Indians, decide to disown their responsibilities to their parents, to the near and dear, 60-70 crore Indians will be standing before the government of India for 2 square meals a day, where there will be government or public order or economics or market or stock market. This is a model for the world. It is because we are not a contract-based society. Now we are reducing everything into a contract. Marriage has been reduced into a contract. Father and son relationship is a contract. With the neighbors, you have a moral obligation. In 1994 in Chennai, one of my friends, he was driving to State Bank of India. He had a meeting to settle some of these problems. But the neighbor's wife came and said, my husband is having chest pain, he has to be taken to the hospital. He just went in, put the man, went to the hospital. His bank appointment went up in Spoke. 5 years the man suffered. So once I was discussing with him, I asked him, what do you feel about that incident? Guru, I can tell you one thing. If I had gone for the bank appointment, if something had happened to that man, I would never have lived in peace throughout my life. That is India. In America, nobody will bother about it. In America, if a person dies, the husband dies, or wife dies, or father dies, or till the mortuary van comes, you will be sitting with a dead body alone. But in India, for a marriage, you have got to go and invite people to come. For death, they have to come themselves. You know what the philosophy? To share your sorrow, others have to come uninvited. To share your pleasure, you have to go and invite people. This is how this society is built. So this is contract-based society versus relation-based society. This has a huge impact on your own company. I have advised many corporates that you must build a relation-based culture even at the cost of efficiency. Efficiency will give you immediate returns. Loyalty will give you long-term returns. So I have told them that the promoter should go to the top vertical managers' houses at least once a year. See what is happening. He may have a spastic child. And he wears pack coat and all that. He comes on 6 in the meeting. He doesn't know what is working in his mind. You don't know. You don't know the man. You only his dress. And the vertical managers should go to 10 people below them. The whole organization must be linked by personal touch. There will be no attrition at higher level. Once you know your self-manager has this problem, the way you look at him will be very different. This is relation-based society. You have to apply the Western model of HR to suit Indian conditions. I am not saying you should not have contracts, but we don't function only on contracts. How many of you as managers has decided to sack a person only on contract? We don't. But we don't legitimize it. Third thing is, one of the most important things that is happening, I have pleaded with CII, Assocham, FICCI, and I have told Mali also. In fact, the CII people came and sat with me. I said there is complete divergence between agency capitalism of the West and the promoter capitalism of India. putting it for shorter words, I'm using simple sentences. Agency capitalism means the shareholders are represented by agents, funds and things like that. And the company is managed by agents who are CEO. Both sides, one doesn't own capital, the other doesn't represent the capital. With results, huge amount of fraud, all these things is happening because nobody has any stake. This is lack of shareholder oversight, is what this is. For shareholders oversight, they have conceived the governance norms. We have copied it. But here there is shareholder oversight, the promoter oversight is there. The government has 100 provisions on your neck, which is not there in America. Government has no role. Government can order investigation, they can sack you, they can appoint government directors. How can you transplant the same corporate governance model in India? I pleaded with chartered accountants. Everyone does the copy pasting of template pasting of what is happening in SEC in India, and it is endlessly happening. No one is raising the voice. I have made at least 10 important notes and given to all these people. Nothing is happening. So, there is no double agency capitalism in India. There is a owner having capital. 97.5% of the Indian corporates are family managed. And your entire management education system is against family management. And these are the people to work under people who are promoter-led company, in promoter-led company. See how much the manager is thinking he's a fool because he is having shares. He is sitting over me. This is the psychology with which he is handling the promoter. We have to come to terms with the Indian reality. So, our economy is promoter-led. Their economy is promoter-less. A paradigm difference. But that is not reflected in your capital, in your SEBI rules. Or even, when Yashwant Sinha was piloting that independent directors, there are the 5-6 pages of what should be the qualification. I said these are the qualifications which is needed for a realized soul, not for independent directors. What is it you are doing? You are idealizing a business which is not ideal. Robust thinking is needed in the corporate sector, in management institute, in professional institutes, on all these important areas. We need to study every aspect in which we deal with the world with Indian perspective. It is very important because the world would like to know how Indian corporates function. Just when Japan began succeeding, the West went and saw what is the model. They said total quality management. It became a global model. We should expound our global models. Why in TVS there is no attrition? It's also inefficient. Why in Tata's it is not there? But it is not there in General Motors. What's the difference? We have to expound the Indian ingredient. Otherwise, I told Mali, we will be doing holding operation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the question from Vaidishwan Shastra University. Globally, corporates are getting politicized and politics corporatized. Corporate engagement with political establishment serves both corporate and national interests. Please compare India versus the world on the present balance between the two and future roadway.
You see, in India, corporates have played a very important role in the freedom movement. Many corporates. I know that. So, Indian corporates are sentimentally Indian, though not organizationally and in the methods that they pursue. They are still Indian. So, there is a political affiliation, but you must understand, in India, politics is not national. There is local politics, right from the corporations, you got to deal with on the all India level. So my own feeling is, as compared to any Westerner, the Indian businessman is more skilled in handling politicians than anybody in the West. It will be there. India is a growing nation in various ways. And Indian businessmen are also trying to understand, as I was saying, because with many I interact, and they find that we have a global role to play. This is now informing high-end Indian businessmen.
So, we have a question from Mr. Raghavan from Sri City. How can Indian corporates address the potential tension between maintaining relations-based business practices and complying with international standards and regulations?
Sir, this impersonal decision making, particularly, for instance, in banking, in client building in corporates, it has very serious limitations. Now, in the impersonal relationships in banks also, they are now developing customer relationship. I don't know what customer relationship is. Just going and handing over bouquet on birthday doesn't build relationship. So my view is that you must have local managers with local language, local customs. This is so, at least I don't want to mention the name of one of the important financial firms that built the entire business by leveraging on the local relationships of its managers. And its NPA is almost nil. In Karur you go, they lend money and every rupee is recovered. And there are 2,500 private money lenders through whom the banks themselves lend money. And sometimes, I cannot give 50 lakhs, the person asks. And I form an informal consortium and lend 50 lakhs. And I am responsible for collecting that money and giving it to these people. This is how relationships work. This is not in any way contradicting the contractual or legal obligations. Unless you want to use relationships for an illegal purpose. Of course, then you can use that even in a contract. Why only in relations?
Sure. Thank you. Next question is from Kavi in Coimbatore. Regarding the dichotomy between market society and market economy, how can Indian businesses strike a balance between embracing market principles while preserving cultural and social values unique to India?
You see, you may have to study many societies. For example, the entire Asian societies have relation-based model. India is not a unique nation in that sense. It is only the Western nations which have been able to discard relations and build a society based on contract. And so we will have to take the best practices of different nations, because we have not looked at the East at all. We only talk about look East. We don't act East. So obviously we have to relate to, for example, have you ever sent a successful economy like Korea or Taiwan or Malaysia? How do they handle? You are always sending people to Oxford or Harvard, because you don't look at people who are like you. You are looking at people who are unlike you. And then these questions arise in your mind.
Thank you. The next one is from Ritish, Delhi. What role do you see government policies and regulations playing in supporting Indian businesses to culturally grounded approaches?
Sir, actually, my view is the government is now understanding that there is Indianness in India. Previously, no government was even recognizing there is Indianness in India. But unfortunately, the government is run by a system of bureaucracy. And we have to now think for the government. I always advise all people to whom I have advised on not only business, on government-business relationship. You have to think for the government. You have to sit on the other side. And then remove the cobwebs in the system. For example, I was involved in some discussions. Professor Mudra was one of them. R.K. Swami group was involved in helping me, and one of the persons who stood by that was R. Tyagarajan. We all worked. We had personally nothing to do with it. Then Mudra scheme was created. It's completely out of the way. It had nothing to do with market economics also. It has certainly nothing to do with market society. But it is something which will work in and for India. So to convince the government of India, of course we could not convince them fully. We convinced them 60-70%. Enormous amount of work had to be put in. So we all have to work to make the government understand India. Because even the government doesn't fully understand India.
Thank you. The next one is from Saravanan, Coimbatore. What are the implications of the shift from a Western-dominated global order to a more multipolar world for Indian businesses seeking to expand their international footprint?
It will be based more on the traditional, in fact this has been discussed in the context of India's relationship with UAE and Saudi Arabia. You know, these were all countries with whom we had a communal relationship. In fact, we had to send people of the same community to deal with them. But it has completely changed. It is now leadership to leadership dealing. So much so, preferring over Pakistan. Saudi Arabia is going to have a defense agreement with India. And if I understood it even deeper, the maintenance or the security of the two masjids in Saudi Arabia, which is now with Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has been thinking for quite a time to hand it over the Indian army. Because they feel a neutral army is needed. Because in Pakistan, the army, we don't know who is the jihadi and who is a soldier. So the traditional values of relation building is very, very necessary in international diplomacy. Strategy plays a lesser role where you have relation-based approach. Otherwise, everybody you begin to dealing with is strategically. And that is what America did. Strategize the entire relationship. Now it is becoming more personal.
Thank you. The next one is, this has come on WhatsApp from Ravi Shankar. How can we get the government institutions to better their infrastructure in terms of libraries, hostel, that can help us stop the brain drain to the West?
See, the brain drain is bound to take place because there are global opportunities. There is no use crying over it. I know there are many who want to return to India, which never happened 20 years back. You have got to perform. When you perform, people will definitely come. It is not that people come for your clean roads and things like that. People also come back because there is culture, value systems. In fact, if someone has a girl who is 8 or 9, he becomes fidgety in America. He wants to come back here. Otherwise, the girl is asked, what about, don't you have a boyfriend? And that, where it shakes a man. So you have got to now project the soft power of India, which we didn't know about it. So now we are beginning to understand it. So this balance will come. You know, there are 45 million Chinese outside America and many of the top scientists. But they work for China. So we must also make Indian outside India to work for India. And that is already happening. Take for instance, one of my friends, Sridhar Vembu. In fact, he calls me his mentor. I told him, his idea ultimately is in the next 5 to 7 years, he should emerge as the top 5, 6 technology companies in the world. That is the goal. I said that you should do from India, not from New York, not even from Bombay. You should do from a small village. And the amazing results. And their in-house R&D is so strong. Their margin is 40%, which is the highest in IT sector. And they have not a single rupee loan. They have not sold their single share. Because he said, once I sell the shares, the funds want 40% return, 30% return. Where will I invest in R&D? And he has, in G6, he has 12,000 crores. It is possible to run a very successful technology company from Govindaperi village, because today you have electronic highway everywhere and you don't need national highways.
Thank you. The next one is from Sabarish Salem. How do Indian corporates navigate geopolitical challenges and changes in the international trade policies which are always pro-Western?
See, the policies being pro-Western is historical continuity, for which, you have got to develop. Most of these industry associations have become debating clubs. You must make all of them do robust studies. In fact, if I remember right, when the Coimbatore casting units were a huge problem, I told them not to look for foreign investment, to go and study how Chinese are building their casting businesses. They found there is a casting unit around which there are 50 houses. And the traveling distance between the house and the factory is only 500 meters, 200 meters. And of course, the kind of work it is demanded from Chinese and the Indian laws, you cannot. But they say it is 24 hours the kiln will burn. So you have got to go and study how it is. On that basis, it all depends upon sharing the best experiences of the most successful people who are not necessary. The West has become too lazy, I can tell you. Once they have begun enjoying tourism, the society will die.
We'll take one last question, sir. This is from Ms. Priya Pondicherry. What strategies can Indian corporates employ to remain competitive in a rapidly changing global market?
See, it has to be an industry-specific question. There is nothing like a view which is applicable to all businesses. For example, I talk about IT. If IT companies want to conquer the world, they must move away from metropolis, because the biggest cost in IT businesses is the real estate cost, the land cost. The moment you move away from the city to some Dindukal or some other place, your cost becomes half. That much and the fellows whom we employ here, they actually come from those places. And the first thing they lose is the house. They are living in the house, 20, 30 kilometers, they can come by a scooter. They are doing it. I'm seeing it. Because our mind is cosmopolitan. We cannot cease to be cosmopolitan. We have got to cease to be cosmopolitan to become competitive. I think it is industry specific practice that is a must if we have to establish a global level competence.
Thank you, sir. Group captain.
Thank you so much. Your viewers, we've got so many questions. But possibly your time, you're not able to talk about all the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fascinating evening. We can keep going, but we have to stop it. Everything is got a scheduled program. And if you are very warm round of applause for a billion of having people. Let us keep look forward with on representing Manipur.
Let's come.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence and